morning. It's March 29th, 2018, and 9:05 a.m. I'm Megan Lally, the chair of the Environmental Quality Council. This meeting is being held at the State Library, 2800 Central Avenue, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Present today from the council are Tim Flitner, Dr. Dave Bagley, Deb Balmer, John Cora, and myself. Staff present today are Jim Ruby, George Warden, and Ryan Shalehouse from the Attorney General's office. Would everyone, I guess I missed this part. Just a minute.
You don't have to say that if you don't want to.
Yeah. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from our February 21st and 22nd, 2018 meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Madam Chair.
Oh, do we have to do this?
Could I just ask, has some of the blanks been filled in?
Yes, they have, Dr. Bagley. All of them have been. I sent an email out yesterday. They're the very last one, the executive session at the end of the day. I can't find, and it didn't get caught on the record, who made the motion to go into executive session and who seconded it. And then the motion to adjourn, I couldn't find it either. So those three blanks are still there. And I sent out an email asking if anybody remembered who made the motion to go into executive session, the very last one, with regards to legal advice regarding the events that were transpiring that day.
I believe I made that.
Okay. And does anybody remember who seconded it?
It wasn't Tim.
It might have been me.
Okay. We were down to fairly few people at that point.
Also. It could have been. Yeah. I'll say I did it.
Okay. And then who moved to adjourn?
I think all of us together.
Yeah, we just got up and left.
Because I remember I moved to adjourn and everybody said, we're out of here.
We're done.
Everybody's scattered like sparrows.
Okay. Okay, so do I have a motion to, or as amended? All those in favor of accepting the motion as amended?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. I will now turn the gavel over to Councilwoman Balmer as the hearing officer in docket 17-4201A, Good Bentonite Company.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. In the Good Bentonite case, we received a stipulated motion to dismiss. The parties worked out their disagreement. So I guess what is before us now is if I could get a motion to accept the stipulated motion to dismiss.
Madam Hearing Officer, I think just to be sure we're correct, I need to recuse myself from the good matter. So if I may do that now, and I'll just move over there for a moment. I know it's settled, but
Yeah, and I don't think you even need to move, honestly. Can't say anything.
Okay.
You're just not participating in this. I'm okay with that. Are you okay with that? Okay. All right. So I don't know if everyone's had a chance to look over the stipulated motion to dismiss, but it does look like the parties worked things out. Good Bentonite stated they would comply with the bond letters that were sent, and as part of the agreement, the NOV would be dismissed. So,
Yeah, I move we accept it.
do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I was just going to say this is exactly what I was going to propose today. So I'm really glad that they got it sorted out.
Yeah.
Well, close to that.
Okay, great. Do I need to do roll call vote, or can we?
Yes.
Okay. I'll do a roll call. Dr. Bagley?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
And I vote aye. All right, they attached a proposed order. I looked at the order and I think it's appropriate. I'll have Ryan look at it and make sure it's okay, but I just intend to sign the order today. And I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. Sorry, I got lost. We'll now take up the matter of docket number 171601, Black Hills Bentonite request for order in lieu of consent. Do I have a motion to approve the request for order in lieu of consent?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and now we will have discussion on this order in lieu of consent. Dr. Bagley?
Yeah, Madam Chair. This is a tough one for me, but I'll kind of work through. As I understand, we're really just trying to determine 4 things: whether the mining plan or reclamation plan were submitted to the surface owner, that mining plan and reclamation plan wasn't sufficiently detailed to allow them to look at the surface use and routes of egress and ingress, that the use does not substantially prohibit operations, and that the proposed plan reclaims the surface to its approved future use. So as I was thinking about the evidence and the hearing, I kind of go through and give you my thoughts on each of these. The mining and reclamation plan were originally submitted, but then they Black Hills submitted ultimately the entire permit application, which is even more information than they were required to submit. And so I think that one's been met. Now, whether they've agreed with what's in the plan or not is another issue, but it just says here has been submitted, and they got the entire permit application, which includes the mining and the reclamation plan. So to me, item A has been met. That the mining plan and reclamation plan is detailed enough. Again, the mining plan and reclamation plan by themselves may not have been, I don't know, but the whole permit application was ultimately given to them. And I know that plan has to have enough information in it for DEQ to make a decision. So I'd say that it is appropriately detailed. Now, what DEQ will decide is a separate step than this. We're just trying to say, did they have enough information? And again, I think they also did, because we saw on maps that they were arguing about, well, you shouldn't drive on this road or you shouldn't drive on that road. That tells me there's enough detail that people can argue about it. So I say that's done. Part C, that the use does not substantially prohibit the operations of the surface owner. This is always a tricky one, right? This ranch, the full property of the ranch, I think it was about 60,000 acres, if I remember correctly. And this portion of it is, in the order of hundreds of acres or less. And I remember the actual details. It's there we go. I do remember it's written here. 347 acres and under 30 acres to be mined. So as I look at that, I don't know if that spot of land is critical to the operation of the whole 60,000 acres. Nobody suggested one way or the other, and as I look at just the numbers, I think, oh, that's a small percentage. I don't know that could cause a substantial, but if that was a critical portion, maybe that's where cattle are moved through from one side to the other. Maybe there's critical water resources there. None of that was ever brought forward. I didn't see any evidence that was the case. So it's hard for me to see how that one small section would substantially prohibit the operations of the surface owner's entire facility. Now, I could see that might be inconvenient one way or the other, but that's not what the law doesn't say inconvenient. It just says substantially prohibit. So to me, the use of that and this particular permit application, this 347 acres would not substantially prohibit the operations, at least in mine. Now, it became clear to me that the parties have a history And the concern of the landowner was, well, we're not happy with how things have been done in the past, and so we think that this is going to be an issue going forward. And that may or may not be. It seemed to be from what I was hearing, but that is not what we're asked to examine. So, to me, C is met. The last one was that the proposed plan reclaims the surface to its approved future use. And this one, I must admit, I have some difficulty with because, and this is where the history kind of plays into my thinking. The landowner has said, look, we've got sites that have been mined and have not been reclaimed from however long ago. And we're concerned that now we're going to have the same thing here. And Black Hills has said, well, no, we'll reclaim it, which I'm sure they will. They have to. It's part of their permit requirements to reclaim it. But it doesn't seem that there's clear deadlines on when these things have to be done. And piles of bentonite appear to be in previous activities, appear to be still sitting there waiting to be removed and used before the surface can be reclaimed. And the law only says as soon as feasibly possible and doesn't give us any guidance as to what feasibly possible means. So I worry on this case, well, what if the mine, they go in, they open the pits. I feel pretty confident they'll get the bentonite out of the pits quick. And then they may leave piles of things lying around until they determine it's feasibly possible to remove. And I can certainly see the landowner's concern on that. The plan says that it will be reclaimed. It'll have to be reclaimed. But this feasibly possible is giving me some concern. So on that one, I'm not yet. I'd like to hear some other thoughts from council members onto that. I'm on the fence on that one at this point.
Tim?
Well, I probably should speak last, but I guess I'm next in line. So I guess most of what Dr. Bagley said, I agree with. These are bentonite mines, and that's going to take precedence. And as far as being able to operate a cattle ranch in a bentonite mine, that's a doable thing. I mean, we do it all the time. It's a matter of a mining plan, and 300 some acres on a 60,000 acre place. I think it'd be a tough argument to sell that that's a substantial problem to deal with, but it is a problem, and there are issues. And Ryan, you may have to weigh in on this, because our issues have always been, and I think most people in the ranching business, isn't that that they get no compensation for whatever problems they're having with bentonite companies. We're talking about the lack of it's funny that we're here talking about Black Hills bentonite again and the Brian Good thing, because that's where that whole thing started too, was a permit with Black Hills that had laid almost dormant without reclamation for 15 years, which is the same complaint that, the ranch on this particular situation is complaining about, the lack of actionable reclamation on places that should be reclaimed. And where's the leverage for the landowner to say, get with it. You haven't touched this in 10 years. Let's put it back. And so I'm assuming that falls on the DEQ, maybe to be a little more diligent in leaning on those people to get that done. Having said that, it's still a bentonite mine. It was a mine when this owner bought it. It's still a mine. They have a right to mine. Now, Ryan, this is where you may have to weigh in. What are the compensation for the losses? It's not really the DEQ's problem to weigh in on the cattle that are hit on the haul roads or the ones that fall into the reservoirs and die in the water. Where do we find some sort of fairness between the losses that the landowner takes and allowing this consent? Now, maybe we're getting too far into it. Maybe this is just, like I say, I'm looking for advice here. Maybe this is just the order in lieu of consent, and that part comes later with the permit. Maybe I'm ahead of it, but there needs to be something there that says, if you infringe on the landowner's right to to operate his property in a fair and safe manner with his livestock, then you are liable for it. And that's what's been lacking in most cases. So I think that, you know, like I said, I agree with Dr. Bagley on most of this stuff. And I think, you know, I'm probably going to vote in favor of the motion because I think you go into these things with your eyes wide open as a landlord. It's really similar to the Ramaco thing. It was a mine when you showed up and bought it. It's still a mine. They have a right to go after those resources. There is mitigation that needs to be done. There's compensation that needs to be made, but those are all hurdles that can be overcome.
John?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with everything that's been said so far. I would say that on item D, the reclamation plan has to pass muster with the DEQ. And the landowner does have a right to appear before actually has a right to come back to the council if he's not happy with that permit and happy with the reclamation standard. So that reclamation plan is there. Our job, and I don't think we're qualified to get into the weeds and decide or determine the quality of the reclamation plan or the efficacy of that plan. I think that's outside our scope. So I agree with Dr. Bagley's position on A, B, C, and then on D, I understand the difficulty. But I believe that the discussion about the quality of the reclamation plan is to come at a later date. And I think there is a plan. It's well documented that the plan has been submitted to the landowner. And I think there's a whole process ahead of the coming up in the coming months in front of the permit applicant to work that out with the landowner. So I think all of the conditions have been met for us to make the decision that's being asked of us. But while I have the chair, though, I would, I think, or while I have the talking stick, I'm sorry, while I have the talking stick, I can't resist making two comments, though, directly to the DEQ. And what we heard during his testimony was a lot of dust control issues. And we heard some discussion about whether or not the drainages are being protected properly. We didn't have enough time, nor was it inside the scope of the hearing to understand just whether there was a water quality violation or not. But I think that that is something that I think you should pay special attention to, because I think in the middle of all of this, where they were talking about the actual subject matter of that hearing, there was some testimony, and I thought good, honest testimony coming from the ranch manager specifically, that was saying, hey, the drainages aren't necessarily being taken care of right, and there is a lot of dust on the road. Now, there could be some dust coming from the oil and gas operations as well as this, but I would just encourage the Land Quality Division, as they review this permit, that pays special attention to the landowner's complaints about how things are happening on that land. But that concludes, but I think all four conditions have been met for us to make the decision. Thank you.
Deb?
I agree with what everyone has said here, so I won't repeat all of that. I intend to vote in favor of the motion as well. I think for our purposes for right now, it's a pretty low threshold, really, to get through this first step. I suspect they'll be back. We'll see different parts of this come back, but where we are right now, I think they've met all four elements. I think the testimony from McGuire met element C. I don't know. I didn't necessarily feel like you did, Dr. Bagley, about substantially affecting the ranch operations, because I think McGuire said, no, it's not going to. It's in a different, the operations are mostly in a different spot. They did lose 2 cattle 3 years ago. And I didn't think that was a substantial prohibition of operations either. So anyway, I intend to vote in favor of the motion as well.
Thank you. I've looked at all the elements as well. And like Dr. Bagley, my biggest concern is the continuing lack of reclamation. I mean, mines that are not operating shouldn't have not reclaimed their land in 20 years. That's sort of the purpose of the reclamation plan in the first place. But we're not looking at other mines. We're looking at this mine. And, it's the duty of the DEQ to put strict timelines on those, the reclamation and how long it's going to take to get it done, and a commitment from Black Hills Bentonite. I would encourage Mr. Crossingham, although I don't think anybody's here from them, to keep on top of this and make sure to meet their deadlines. Because if you appeal past the deadline, you're not going to get your appeal in. Having said that, I will probably also vote in favor of the order of consent. Saying that, I will, Dr. Bagley, what's your?
I haven't heard everyone's thoughts on this. Appreciate that, and I guess what I'll be hoping to see as the permit goes forward, if it ends up in front of us, I'll be hoping to see some pretty firm deadlines on reclamation, because I think that's owed to the landowner. But at this point, I agree that we have met D, and so I vote aye for the motion.
Tim?
Aye.
Deb?
Aye.
Aye.
And I will vote aye also. So, Ryan, if motion passes, would you please prepare an order for this matter? And we'll be meeting again on May 22nd, and we'd like to have that ready by then for approval. That will conclude docket 17-1601. And thank you, everybody, for your good. And
You don't mind taking just a short break,
Yep.
and it'll allow Kathy to
pack up.
her stuff and
We
get
can
on
do
her
that.
way.
Well, this was
Thank
a
you,
short one
Kathy.
for you. Come on, you act like you don't like us.
No,
Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. I guess first, we will go ahead and do election of officers. At this point, we have one officer.
You?
Me. So we need to do the election of officers. Is there any nominations for officers?
What are the positions?
There is chair, vice chair, and secretary.
Well, I'd like to nominate you, Megan, to be chair again for another year, if you're so willing.
We want to do it for one more year if everybody's willing to give me one more shot. Hopefully we don't have another.
First year's just for practice, you're all.
Well, hopefully we'll get it right this time. And do we have any nominations for vice chair or secretary?
I'd like to nominate Deb for vice chair if she's so willing to serve. You've been on the council for a whole year. You know,
No, she's been on for a whole 6 months.
well, round that up.
Actually, since January, 3 months.
She came with experience.
Yeah.
Well, my husband said that I need to learn how to just say no. But I'm not going to say no. I'd agree to it. He's going to kill me. If you guys want me, I mean, I'm okay with it.
Vice chairman.
Yeah.
Kind of like Mike.
Best
Jensen,
position.
don't have to do much.
Yeah.
As long as Megan does her job, there's easy.
Yeah, I don't even know what the vice chair does. I don't know what these positions do. I'm too
That's all
new.
you need to know.
Do I have a nomination for secretary?
Well, I nominate John for secretary.
David and I aren't doing it.
I think
Who's the secretary?
You can't say no, you're the last one.
I am getting slow on my own. I have to pick up on Dr. Bagley's strategy till.
We've been talking about it.
What does the secretary do?
Signs the minutes.
Not much. He can handle it. That might be a little bit of a challenge for him.
I'm in executive sessions if I can't be in there.
That would match my capabilities, so if Dr. Bagley didn't want to have interest in
It's time you expanded your goals a little.
Jim, you may or may not decide to stay on after this year,
Oh, no,
right?
I've already decided.
Would you
I'm out of here. I decided 4 years ago and got my arm twisted.
Are there any other nominations for officers?
I move the nomination cease.
All those in favor?
2 out of the 5 of us have to.
I know.
Yeah, do I have a motion to accept the slate of officer nominations?
So moved.
Second. You can't railroad it.
Who's going to call my husband?
You.
Sure.
Secretary. All those in favor?
And, yeah. My favorite drink is a beer.
I need a vote for the
Okay.
officers. We really do have to do that.
All
those in favor? All those in favor of the slate of officers?
Aye.
I
Opposed? Motion passes.
Congratulations. I think you find this to be incredibly rewarding.
As they say in baseball, there's always next year, Doctor.
Oh my God.
The thing is with you guys though, you don't move down that ladder, you move up.
And then once you're first chair, then you
It
get to
gets
go to
worse.
rep.
You know where that puts you next year.
No, it's not gonna.
Yeah. Right into the chair.
I think we need to revisit this.
I'm just warning you.
Okay.
We need to
Common
revisit
courtesy.
this.
Let's move on to the next order of business. As most of you are aware, legislatures asked the EQC and the DEQ to do an evaluation of the EQC and prepare a report for the legislature to be filed with the Joint Appropriations Committee and the Minerals Committee. There's a link to the legislation on the agenda if you want to pull it up.
Is that the final legislation? I was skimming through it. And is this the final?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, here's the final. Because it only had 300 and something thousand. This one has the 700.
That should have been the.
Passed it down. I think that was the introduced version, because it still had both footnotes
Oh, there's only one footnote now.
Yeah, so
Okay, here we go.
pass it.
Thank you.
This is the actual paper.
Oh, yeah, and we don't have to dig through all 125 pages.
Do you like when Director Purchase?
I'm good.
Okay.
Let's take a couple minutes.
No later than November.
How do I get back to the,
The agenda.
It's like school lunch.
just keep doing that?
Morning,
Oh,
Andrew.
wait a minute, here, let me go home. Oh, there, here we go, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, has everybody looked through legislation and have an opinion? At this time, I'd like to take up the discussion regarding this legislation and how the council would like to proceed. Let's start at this end. Dr. Coro. Director.
Well, I'm trying to pull up the legislation to be sure I was refreshed on it, but I read it enough times. I think I'll just go ahead and start talk. I think it was good that the cooler heads prevailed in the legislative session and actually funded the second year. It was awkward. The intent finally got, and I think the intent of the legislature now is for the two agencies to get together and work through the question about manpower, staffing, efficiency, efficacy of the relationship. I think we have some latitude in how we present that. I think that a good partnership between the council and the DEQ, we can pull together something. And I think given the nature of the language and the statute and the way it will appear before the Minerals Committee, I think we have some latitude to frame that, which I think is good news. In other words, nobody was asking us, or nobody has given us a specific recipe that says answer question A, question B, and question C, period. What they said is, you guys get together with the DEQ and sort out how this relationship works and what the staffing requirements are. And I think so I think we can do well with that. The Minerals Committee may give us some more direction, but we won't know that until after March 19th. That's when the Management Council of the Legislature will finally publish all of the interim topics. And so we'll have to wait till then to find out if the scope of that discussion has changed any at all. And Todd, you may have.
Well, I think you said March. I think you meant April.
Yeah, did I say March? I meant, yeah, it's April. All right, April 19th. Sorry about that. So the last thing I'll say is that the legislature, and this is not spot on to the question of our teaming up with the DEQ in this particular legislation, but I think it's important for the council to be aware of if you're not already. The legislature also said a couple of things under this efficiency in government umbrella that they're dealing with or working on, that they wanted an agency by agency, or what they did is they said a department/agency by agency review of these agencies and what they do and their rules and regulations. And I was there watching that, and on the floor, as soon as that was brought up, a legislator said, and we'll start with the DEQ. And another one said, and the Land Quality Division. So, well, that's outside our scope, and good luck to you all as you work through that. This is a massive amount of work, in my opinion. But I think for us as a council, as we talk about how we go forward from our perspective and discuss this topic, it would be good for us to be aware of what I just said, that there's this broader issue out there about efficiency in state government that the legislature is interested in. So I think, Madam Chair, I'll contribute to the conversation afterwards, but I do think as a suggestion that a smaller group, say 3 people from the council and 3 people from DEQ or maybe 4 from the DEQ, get together to begin to scope this out, and for us to find a vehicle as a council to find a way to agree to the scope, or at least become aware of the scope. You know, there's a balancing act between when to have a public noticed hearing of our body and the timing of when those ought to be. But I do think that we need to be cognizant of the interest on the part of the public. I think these meetings that occur in a smaller group don't need to be public noticed, but the door needs to be open. And if somebody wants to come in and sit and watch that working of that group, we should be able to do that. But I think as we work forward, we got to think of our own schedule in terms of how we have these touch points, so that all the members of the council are up to speed on how things are going. So those are my thoughts, Madam Chair, and my suggestion.
Deb?
Well, I like what John said. I envisioned having 2 or 3 council members and a few folks from DEQ, probably including Todd, to form our committees and just get together and try to figure out, well, number one, what they want, the scope. And like you said, we'll know more, maybe, or maybe not, but at least come to an agreement on what it is we're supposed to do, and then work toward, some kind of solution to it. But I also agree that all the council members need to know what's going on and be reported to frequently, and maybe even have Ryan's involvement if necessary. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is yet, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help bring everybody together and come up with something that works.
Tim?
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I think a lot of these studies in government in general end up amounting to a whole lot of nothing, and no action is taken, et cetera, because in the end, a lot of people just don't have the willpower to fall on their sword over issues that in the end amount to tens of thousands of dollars instead of hundreds of thousands of dollars, or millions, which is the problem that they're facing. Having said that, who's ever working together on this, I think the elephant in the room is, and from what I've talked to, the people I've talked to in the governor's office and around, the thing that people have been digging at for years is our employees, and what do we do with them? And the fact that the thing that keeps coming back is, well, we don't have enough work to do for them when we're not busy, and they're overpaid and they're underworked, et cetera, and it would be way more efficient to roll them into the DEQ. And that's part of what the statute kind of leans towards. And that's, in my mind, that's where the problem really lies. And that's going to be the crux of where we're going to differ probably in these. Everything else is, nobody really has that serious a dog in the fight. The problem is going to be, from what I see, and what happened with the Senate and the funding and how long it took them about 15 minutes to figure out they wanted no part of that fight that was started on the floor of the House. I mean, you could tell, they just said, whoa. At least that's the impression that I got, that they just, that wasn't something they were willing to just go to war over. So here's my problem, being on this side of the table and talking to the people of the state and the people that we serve. Rolling Jim's position and Joe's position, and chances are I'll be gone before this gets done, but I think you need to be really careful about what you're getting into there, because in my mind, this is the same as a district judge having his clerk and his assistant or his paralegal or whatever employed by one of the parties that are in front of him on a contested case. And that's the way it's going to be perceived, because like it or not, the DEQ is either on one side or the other of almost everything we do. I mean, they have their attorneys and their expert witnesses, and they are here or they are there. And we are up here trying to decide. And if you look at our history, we generally vote in favor of the DEQ. They've generally historically done their homework. They come prepared. They've written the permits. They're well informed about them. I mean, you can go back from, the coal bed methane days, small gravel mines, whatever. Generally, the DEQ and industry has prevailed. They kind of do their homework. I mean, even way back into the air quality permits and all that stuff when we were having so many hearings. If you look at our record, you guys are winning far more than you're losing. And by you guys, I mean the DEQ and industry, because those are generally aligned. I mean, they come to you for permits, you write them. So naturally, you're going to be on the same side. So now if the ruling body and their employees are also employed by you, there's going to be so much blowback across the state of Wyoming that I think it's just going to be something that in the end, the legislatures say, I'm not, for a few tens of thousands of dollars a year, I'm not fighting that battle. I'm not forcing that down the general public's throat for the extra $40,000 a year, whatever. Are we really going to lose elections and be in the newspaper every week during the legislature over this? And all? I think that may be where this thing's going. And it would be far easier if we could do it to find more work or to combine our staff with somebody else's staff, the industrial siting, or I don't understand how all those things work. So I don't know what the fits would be, but to try to get them more work, not put them under the DEQ's payroll, because and this part I believe in my heart, you cannot serve two masters. You just cannot. That you can't write their checks and oversee them and have them be in the middle. They can't be in the middle. Their promotions, all that stuff is based on your opinions and your decisions and all that. And you just can't put a person in that position and have him be perceived as being not leveraged. The general public just is not going to buy it. I don't buy it. And I think as people get more informed about the role of the EQC, and as we get more press and more scrutiny and more studies, more people are going to understand how important it is that the EQC's perception of independence is exactly that, independent. Because if it's not, you just will roll this thing up and let the EPA have it. Because unless we can buffer that and have people walk away, the losing party, walk away and say, look, I lost, but it was fair. And that's the end of it. When you lose that, you're going to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in district court on appeals. And that's really what we're after. So when we start talking about efficiency and this argument, whoever this committee is going forward, I think that's one of the things that you really need to push on. Outside of one council member who disagreed with us, this is a pretty good process. When I first got on this council years ago, I thought, my God, you're going to drag me down there once a month for 3 and 4 and 5 day hearings? There's got to be a better way. Maybe you could do it with 4 people. I just thought, God, there has to be a better way. Having served these years, I'm telling you, it's hard to be. I've come up at a loss at how to make it more efficient or improve. I'm sure there are ways. People smarter than me might figure them out. But in the end, compared to our legal system in district court, this is a pretty fast, pretty efficient, pretty fair system, and it works pretty well. And I think if history will prove that. I think if you look across the board, we've made pretty good decisions, haven't been overturned. Maybe I don't remember the last time we were overturned on some trivial stuff. Maybe back on Punkin, what was that, years ago? Anyway, been pretty successful as far as the decisions we've made. So I think that's the issue that's worked well for the DEQ. We've had our differences, but it worked well, and I think that's what we need to push on. It's pretty efficient already. Don't be messing with it too much, or you might end up in district court spending millions. That's my soapbox. I'll be done for the day.
Dave?
So pass your soapbox over. This whole process recently has been unfortunate, in my opinion. The political nonsense that was going on. But I think it's always going to. The Environmental Quality Council is always going to be in this case because we're always going to be making rulings that are going to irritate somebody. And the people, if we irritate people with bigger pocketbooks, they're going to go talk to their legislators. And that's frankly what I think happened here. And all we're doing is enforcing the law. I mean, it's all we do is we interpret the law and make decisions based on that. And so they're going to say, well, how can we get rulings that we want? And well, they're going to have to rewrite the law, which the legislature can do. I mean, that's up to them. But this, with respect to trying to make our staffing better, I do think that there is a real opportunity for us to more carefully define the jobs that we need done for us. And, you know, when we looked at job descriptions and we saw that there was all sorts of things in there that may or may not have been appropriate for a member serving our council, that definitely needs, I think, some good attention. And I really like this subcommittee idea to look at that, because what do we really need as a council to serve us properly? And one thing I want to be nitpicky about the law, because the legislatures like to pretend they know the law, but it says here in D that the director and his staff shall provide the council with meeting facilities, secretarial or clerical assistance, supplies, and other such assistance as the council may require in performance of its duties. Okay, that does, and then, but it also says in E, upon request, the attorney general shall provide legal assistance. So we actually have to ask for your assistance, which we greatly appreciate. So thank you. But it also says the council may employ independent legal assistance as necessary to the proper performance of its duties. So I mean, it's right in the law too. So the argument that, well, no, it needs to be staffed by DEQ because it's in the law is frankly only partially accurate. It just drives me nuts when politicians try to move stuff around and don't even look at the law that they themselves wrote. So that's part of my soapbox. So, but anyway, I think it is important. And we've been told we need to look at this. And I think that's appropriate to look at it. And I like the suggestion of getting a small group, small enough that we don't have to violate public meeting law, right? So that group can work independently, but then provide publicly at a public meeting in this body, provide updates. But I don't want them to have to be able to sit, have to have the public in there. So I'll defer to our legal counsel to suggest how big that group can be to make that happen. Okay, so and let's get an understanding of what we need. I think it's really important, as Tim said, that when folks have an issue, they don't have to go to the DEQ to submit their concerns, because maybe it's the DEQ they have concerns with. If it's a permit application, they're maybe unhappy with what the DEQ's come up with. So we need some kind of staffing for the council that allows people on all sides of an issue to be able to know, not just feel, but know that their complaint will come to us, and then we will deal with it in a fair manner, like we do, and we'll irritate somebody with our decision. I mean, that's like almost a guarantee. But having it directly route through the DEQ in all cases, I think will be a challenge. But I'll let our subcommittee, I'm sure, is going to think about these things and come up with work with DEQ. And I really do think we need to have a good working relationship with DEQ in any case. They know that half the time, maybe not half the time, but often we'll argue with them. But that's our role by law to do. So I think we'll get a good plan put together. It will be interesting to see if we get additional details from the legislature that we need to examine. But we will. I mean, we need to. We have to meet this. And I think in the end, my hope is that we'll end up with a staffing situation that serves the needs of council well. It's never going to stop some bean counters trying to figure out how they can pull a couple $1,000s out of this tiny little budget. I don't know how many millions they're trying to close the budget. What's that?
Or get a vote they want.
Yeah. But that's always going to be, in times of budget cutting, you're going to be looking at every position all the time. It's just the way it is. Let's come up with a plan where we have clear job descriptions, how we interact with the DEQ, how we can improve that, and yet maintain our independence, which is granted in the law. So we want to keep that. All right, I'll hand the soapbox over to whoever's.
Yes, I'm next. I agree with pretty much everybody else. And I've talked to Director Parfit also. And we all, he doesn't want our employees any more than they want to work in the DEQ. For much the same reason.
No offense.
It's, to quote you directly, it's the fox in the hen house perception, and we will lose all appearance and possibly even some, ability, not even deliberately, of independence. Some of these contested cases we've hearing where it's versus the DEQ, it's very, very adversarial. And many times it's DEQ personal employees against, mine owners or small business people. And, that makes it very hard, and it would make somebody who worked for the DEQ very uncomfortable to try and have to manage that. And I don't want to put anybody in that position. And I think the subcommittee is a good idea. I'm not sure how we're going to do it because I've had 6 people approach me wanting to be on the subcommittee. So
It's good.
We'll have to figure out which 3 would be the best for that. But I think we need to move forward and do this in as open and transparent process as possible, so that at the end of the day, there's not going to be any objections to it. So, and Director Parfit.
I'm assuming that we can continue the conversation. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to give
Sure.
Director Parfit a chance to
good.
talk, and then anybody else
Great.
that wanted to contribute further.
Thank you. And I do have quite a few things to say. We deal with what you're talking about, where not everybody agrees with the decisions we make. It's surprising. But, and that's part of the challenge. But I think the main thing is we need to understand what it is that's in this footnote of the budget. And I've kind of broken it down into 4 main parts. That's separate. What John's talking about is the management council of the legislature hasn't locked in on what the interim topics are going to be. This isn't an interim topic. It is kind of, but it's already there. It's in the budget. There was some discussion about potentially having an interim topic related to the EQC, and I don't know if that's going to go anywhere or not. That's separate from the budget bill. So we'll have to watch that and see what comes out, mid-April in terms of interim topics. However, we did get tagged with looking at the land quality division from the efficiency report that the state had done, and they want to focus in on land quality. And I think that has more to do with House Bill 25 on small mines than it does with our interaction with the EQC. So when you see that for land quality, that's to me a separate issue. Anyway, so let me just first break down what I see in the footnote. One is a joint report. It's not a report from DEQ and a report from EQC. It's a joint report. So this concept of having a work group makes a lot of sense. Efficiency and adequacy of staffing the council. So this isn't about the council. And I think you've all mentioned that. It's about the staffing. How does the council get staffed for the needs of the council? Now, there is a point that we do under the 112B, we do provide some services to the council. The human resources, accounting, and things like that, that, the current staff, they don't have the resources to provide that. So we provide that, but it's kind of a mixed bag. So everything isn't under 111B. We don't provide all those services for sure. So that's an evaluation of the efficiency and adequacy of staffing of the council per 111 or 112B. And then the third thing is whether the council could be staffed exclusively by personnel within the DEQ. The simple answer is yes, it could be. But does it make sense? And I've said this to some of you already, is I wholeheartedly agree with, yeah, you could do it, but does it really make sense? Because when people come to the council, they want to feel like they're getting a fair hearing of their issue. And keeping that separation to me is important. But the other piece of that is, I think what, like John said, is that I think there's an opportunity, I think Tim, you said the same thing, there's an opportunity to maybe take a look at how that service is being provided. Is there a better way that would be better for the staff, for getting resources? And I always go back to looking at, the challenge that Joe has, and I look at the setup for the electronics, and it's like, would it be easier is there an easier way to get funding to upgrade that equipment to make it work a little bit easier? Those are things that I think need to be considered as well. So anyway, so that's the third thing. And then the last thing is provide the report to include recommendations for three things: an annual budget for the council, which I would put it in biannual budget. That's the first. Staffing levels. Do any changes to the staffing levels need to be made? And then any statutory revisions. And that one is the one that jumps out mostly to me, is the statutory revisions, because I think there's an opportunity as we look at this is, can we get rid of some of the ambiguity and confusion that's in there under D, E, and F, and make that and simplify that and say, here's our recommendation, how we think this should work. And by the way, in order to make that happen, you have to change the statute. So I think we have to keep that in mind. Like I said, we talked about opportunity, and that's why I'm viewing this. I mean, if you just forget about how we got here through the session. Okay, well, let's take it and look at it as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to, let's look at how we're doing our business. Is there a better way to do it? I don't know. That's really what we can look at. It's about the positions, not the people in the positions. And I guess that's the other thing I would look at is it's not about people in the position. And we go through the same thing when we're doing JCQs for our position job descriptions. It's not about the person that's in there right now, because much as I hate to say it, I'm not going to be here down the road. Jim won't be here somewhere down the road. So we always have to look at the position. And then it's about services to the council. It's what you need to do your setting the dockets and all that work that goes into having these hearings and so forth. What do you need to do that job most efficiently? So anyway, so those are a couple of things. And I just wanted to reiterate, Tim, I agree that BEQ shouldn't be the one, before we even have this work group look at this. That's kind of my starting point, because I think that's a bad idea for a couple of reasons. I think some of the early discussions would be, oh yeah, DEQ can provide that. Well, if those two positions go away and then DEQ is providing it, I essentially lose two positions somewhere. So there's a net loss there. So I have a self-interest for the agency as well. But I also think that we should, and as was suggested in some of your comments, is look at alternatives. Is there some other place that would make sense, or some other way to structure this that would make sense? I don't know. But I think that's what that group should really explore, is finding out, okay, what services are provided now? Are there additional services that we think should be provided? And then now what are the ways to provide them? Including the things that we're providing now. I think you got to look at it collectively. So I like the idea of the work group, and I think 3 DEQ folks, plenty. I tend to be involved with that myself. But I think we need to make sure that we do a couple of things, and one is stay in communication with the Minerals Committee throughout the process and not wait until the November report, but give them updates along the way. I don't know that everybody has to go, but I would think that, I'm going to be there anyway. But certainly, Megan, I think it would be good if, we collectively said, yep, we got the footnote here and we're making progress and we're working on this. And then get any additional guidance from them that they might have. So we're providing them the information that they're looking for. But we also need to make sure that, from my perspective, that we're keeping the governor's office informed as to, before we submit that final report, I'd like to have the governor's office put eyes on it and say, yeah, we think you're headed in the right direction as well. As far as the work group goes, and then Ryan, you're going to have to somehow be involved with that, because to me, I don't, not sure how that would work in order to maintain the open meetings requirements. So you could have this group of 3, but how do you get the information to the other members? I don't know. That's beyond my understanding. That how would you do that without having a public meeting? So something to think about. And then, and I agree with John. I mean, I think it's early in the process. Having the public weigh in doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think that's why the work group makes sense. But the meetings have to be open, not closed door, but they're open. But keep in mind that there is going to be an opportunity for public comment at the Minerals Committee. Or each time we meet with the Minerals Committee, there will be an opportunity for the public to weigh in and make comment. And so we'll have the benefit of that. So that I'll stop talking, but that's my thing.
John?
Well, I think Todd touched on what I was going to elaborate, and I appreciate the sense of the council in terms of how we feel about what's happened. But Todd's council, that we have to forget about that and just and kind of look forward and consider it an opportunity. It's the right place for us to be. And I would say that, and again, you said it, and I'm going to say it again because I just think it's important. In my experience, we do well to define the work. So what is the work that this council needs to be done to fulfill our statutory obligation? And I think it's one of the first questions, and I would suggest that maybe we find a process for doing that so that we get input from everybody on the council there without having a meeting. Maybe you have to have a meeting, I don't know, Ryan, but somehow, if you define the work first and come at this from an objective point of view, you really tell the Minerals Committee and you tell the legislature that this is a business discussion. It's got nothing to do with past decisions. It's got nothing to do with anything else. Thank you very much for asking us to do this, and here's our answer. And I think when we go through that, and then I like the statutory option, we may find that we need 5 people. And I just made that up just to make a point. And so I think we need to go into this with open eyes and say, well, how could we do our job better even? So Todd, you said that much, and I just felt compelled to add to it. So, Madam Chair, that's it.
To press that a little bit, think we probably, I certainly don't know everything that Joe and Jim do. I think we need to, not just job descriptions, but get an understanding of what they actually, each step of what they do, talking to landowners, setting up meetings, talking to the council, doing motel rooms, all that stuff, all the stuff we don't know that they do, to make sure we're not, trying to define a job that we don't really understand. And I'd like, some input on that also from the staff, because this is that's actually who we're talking about is their jobs. And so I want to make sure we understand what actually goes on and not just what we think goes on.
Madam Chair? So, yeah, I think it's a great idea, and what I think procedurally, how we might go in trying to balance the need for openness, but also the need for a group to actually sit down and do some real work. I could see the subgroup, even meeting directly with Joe and with Jim, and then saying, okay, just kind of work through with us what it is, all the things you do, so that we can get a list of all the things you do and don't miss something. And plus the things that DEQ is doing that we might not even be aware of that's supporting EQC. It's just like John said, get a whole list of all the work that's done on behalf of the council. And then once we got that, I could see a subgroup kind of collecting that and then bringing that and presenting it to the full council in an open meeting. We have enough meetings. We can just almost put it up, update from the working group on this and go through. This is the things that in public we can discuss. That job looks like something the council should be, that we need something to do, or that's something that maybe the council does need. Procedurally, I think we could do that. And that may be a way to handle all this. The working group can then go back, find your way on some more things, bring it to the council. All right, here's where we're at now. And we'd like you discuss the job descriptions or the duties that somebody needs to do. And then maybe come back again and say, this is how we might suggest staffing it, and where people would go. But that kind of information then comes back to the council. We discuss it, everything else. And as Todd and John said, we're going to be in front of the Minerals Committee. It's a public meeting too, and we'll be asking questions. I do think that the council will want to have met on these topics before we send our representatives to the Minerals Committee, so that they'll know, if you're going to Megan, they'll know this is where the council's at, The working group's doing lots of work, but the public information, here's where we're at today, and it's been, keeping that good feedback to the committee, I think is a great idea.
Question for Director Parker. The work that is being done by the efficiency group, statewide efficiency, they hired a consultant. And I'm just expanding on Madam Chair's remark about how do you tee up and understand the work that the staff does today. And there are, in that whole business of organizational design and development, there are processes that these consultants have that help you do that in a way that captures all the information. In other words, my question to you is can you talk to whoever's ramming that thing in the state and get an example of what those consultants do to do their organizational assessments? Because all change efforts start, the very first step is an organizational assessment. And those consultants have these tools in their toolkit to help them figure that out and to find the work. And it would be good if you could chase that down in the state government and see if there isn't something we could borrow that would help us add some structure around how we go about doing what Chair Lally was talking about.
If I respond to that, as far as the efficiency report and where the state is at, right now, A&I is reviewing, doing an in-depth review of that report and verifying that the information, how they analyze that, is correct. And the reason I say that is I'm not sure the timing is going to be all that helpful for us. However, I would offer up that we could take a look at, is there an organization out there that we've used in the past, because we've done some organizational assessments within our own agency, and see if there's a possibility for that. And I would also suggest, knowing kind of what those things cost, if we wanted to do that, we have the resources that we would be able to.
Okay.
I mean, if we had an agreement amongst the work group as to who you wanted to use, we would have the resources to be able to fund that kind of thing.
I thought that's a good offer. I would suggest that we consider that. We do need a structure, I think. The other thing, I just checked the Minerals Committee schedule just to be sure. And their first meeting, which they do not have an agenda out for yet, but their first meeting is May 31st. And my sense is they'll have a meeting, as they said, on the 31st. They'll have another one probably maybe mid to late summer. And then they'll have a fall meeting, and it's at the fall meeting that we have to have our recommendation. So I've kind of shifted, I apologize, but I've shifted into the timing aspects of our work, council members, because we'll have our next meeting on the 23rd of May. So it sounds like the timing might be just right to follow up, in terms of having a review before the full council as to where the subcommittees, right? But on the other hand, that means between now and May 23rd, which is 3.5 weeks away or something like that.
It's older than that.
Yeah, with 4 weeks, saying, we probably need to get going. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I keep saying. I'm right. Well, that's all. So there are different times on here. My fault, excuse me. However, the first meeting, my first point though, is I wanted to just make sure we were aware of the first Minerals Committee meeting is.
Madam Chair, I think from a openness standpoint and everything, it may be useful for us to, as a council, sort of officially designate who will be on our working group. I mean, you can make a motion to say so-and-so will be on it, and that way we know who they are. We've all agreed to it. Also, it may relieve some of your having to do it yourself, which of course you're also welcome to do, but I'm just just making a suggestion.
So I'll tell you where I'm at on that. Everybody, including Nick, has expressed interest in being on the working group.
I have not.
Oh, you have not?
No.
Sorry.
Well, you said 6
Thank you.
What did you say, Chair?
Everybody, including Nick, has expressed interest, except apparently Dr. Becker. There's been objections raised to a couple of people who are interested in being on the working group. And so.
Objections by who?
Somebody, and I don't remember who because I can't remember, objected to Nick being on it, and Nick objected.
Yeah, he objected to me personally. Yeah, he said he was going to.
Yeah, he was pretty open about that, so I feel comfortable.
That was the only reason I really wanted to be on there after that.
That's all the reason
And honestly, I want this to be a functional group.
Yeah.
So whoever needs to be on it, to be a functional group. I have no objections to anybody being on it or anybody not being on it. I see some benefits to him being on it because he's the only one of us that's been on the council for very long. I guess Dave and I now have been on.
Yeah,
5 years?
6 years for me.
5 years. So,
Well, I've got a suggestion. I'm looking down at our 3 new officers, and 2 of whom have already volunteered to be on this committee, and I think the chair sadly has to be on it.
well, I'm perfectly willing to be on it. Because if I have to report to the minutes committee, I'd like to be able to speak intelligently. So I guess that's.
And then
Does anybody have
either
any
Tim
other
or
opinions?
Nick have to fight it out at the committee, although we can still take it to that.
Yeah, I mean, I want everybody that wants to be involved, but I also want to get this done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a dog in the fight. My biggest issue is the independence deal. So with that, you've put my mind completely at ease. I think that we're all on the same page. That was really my only thing that I was willing to go to battle on. So I'm completely comfortable with however you do it. I do think there is, I think Dave not being on it is going to be a little bit of a disservice. I think, all things considered, you're lacking some experience on this side of the table. That would be my only consideration, in all honesty. We've got 2 new members, your first year as a chair. I mean, you don't really have that much experience yet dealing with the Minerals Committee. Those are dicey, as you well know. You go in there, they can. But John's got lots of experience.
We'll be there with you.
Yeah, and make sure and you'll get on.
Right.
And it's not like you're out there on your own. We're all. I mean, it's going to take the whole council to make the decision to give the position. And on the other hand, I think it's also important that the nice part about, especially John and Jeff, they're maybe a little closer because whatever's going to happen is going to happen down here. I'm 6 hours away. Dave at least is going. You're quite away. So it takes somebody that's kind of here, that can maybe come over to a meeting or get together with Todd or whatever. So that's important.
Yeah. Dave's not. He said he's not volunteering, but John and I can volunteer him.
Well, I'm not volunteering. I mean, the council feels it's in the best interest for me to be on the subgroup and put me on the subgroup, but I'm not. There are times, I'm learning to say no as well. But I'm not, I think I can contribute. I've got other things going on, but if the council feels that I should be on it, I'll be on it.
I think as long as we have the opportunity to weigh in on some areas where experience sitting over here might be of some value, I think that's good enough. I don't think we need to necessarily be right in the middle of everything. I don't feel the need. I mean, as long as I have the opportunity to voice my subtle opinion once in a while, I'm good. And I think Dave probably feels the same way.
John's right here in town. Yeah, that's a logical choice.
But I can not be on it too. But before, I had a question. Let me ask a question of our AG.
That was going to be my next step.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay. Well, the question I had was that if you, what we're really trying to do with this committee is find an efficient way for a smaller group of people to get a lot of legwork done. If the committee were to have 4 people on it, but only 3 people met at a time, does that would that be workable under the circumstances, under what we're trying to get done here?
Well, under your statute, a quorum is 4 individuals, but that would be 4 of you getting together to kind of chew on business, to deliberate, to discuss. So if at any one moment there is only 3, and it would stay at 3 or under, then the Open Meetings Act, all those notice requirements are not going to, you're not going to have to follow those. Even though they can still be transparent and open door, you're not going to need to. So you're going to need, I mean, my only advice in this whole situation is, I hear that you want to not have to do all the notice requirements under the Open Meetings Act. And for that, it has to be 3 or less of you all need to be meeting with DEQ, and then that's perfectly proper and legal. So if you want to, say a subcommittee is 4, however, better make that clear that only 3 is going to be meeting at any one time, because people still hear 4 and they think quorum. Mm-hmm. And so that would be my hesitation with that. I mean, I think it's much cleaner. You want to pick 3, you pick 3, and it's those 3 that go do the work. And then when they come back and want to seek your advice, your input, that happens at a full council meeting. And that'd be my only hesitation with that, because it is clear 4 is a quorum, and you appoint 4 members to do something, and And even though you promised, hey, only 3's going to be there,
Can I ask?
there's 4 on the committee and on the subcommittee, so that's my only hesitation.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would, after listening to council, I withdraw the question.
You know,
I've already answered, you can't withdraw.
No, I'm just saying.
I know.
I have no interest in that idea.
Madam Chair, I've got an idea that might get it, I think what John's trying to get at. While, and I said, you know, you would be on it, but on the other hand, you don't have to be on it. You're the chair of the council. You're gonna know what subcommittee's doing. So you can have a subcommittee of 3, and you're not officially on it. The subcommittee's off work and everything else. Of course, they're gonna inform you and everything when they're ready to bring something to the council. You would be in the loop all the time, but not doing the day-to-day work. And then, because the optics of having, he's saying that we're gonna have 4, just, it's not, but if we had, and that could make some sense as a chair saying, look, I gotta make decisions that I don't want to be in the day-to-day weeds. That doesn't stop you from talking to the director or anything, because that's your duty as chair.
Well, then if people can't show up to the meeting, I could still go.
And you would definitely be at the committee meetings, but we'd have, like, this one coming up in May. We're gonna have a meeting on the 23rd. I presume we're gonna be chatting about some of the things that the subgroup is put together by then to help give you guidance as you guys go to the meeting.
Yeah, the only reason I have any desire to be on it at all is just so if somebody asks me a question, I feel like maybe
We have to make sure here.
you know, I don't want to be.
That sounds like a good solution, actually, because of being the chair.
That gives me a step back.
That's right.
Can I
Gives us an extra person.
have a question for Ryan? There wouldn't be anything that, I mean, so say that there were, say Megan wasn't on the 3. There's nothing that would prevent Megan from calling me
No,
and having a
Not at all.
conversation and saying, hey, I can have a conversation with you and give you an update on the work group from my perspective.
Right.
and there would be nothing that would prevent her from telling Deb or John, if they were on it, just individually, because it's just you 2 talking, that's not a quorum. You get into problems when you start doing sequential communications and you're going around the table but there would be nothing to prevent you from talking to.
Whoever the head person is.
Right.
Committee.
Yeah, and the group probably would need, if the group had within the group designated someone who's sort of the lead to talk to you, and then that will help avoid issues. The group is mad and says, okay, tell me this is what we're up to.
If the group decides to have a chair or a co-chair, I mean, I don't want to get down into those weeds, but that individual, those 2 individuals wanted to talk to Megan and say, just want to give you an update. Here's where we are. But then the full update where you guys listen and chew on this stuff and make decisions, because I mean, it's a joint report between DEQ and this council, not the 3 that are going to be doing some of the work. That all happens at an open meeting. So Megan can certainly still be informed of everything.
Well, and Tim and Nick and I and the one council member whose name I can't remember. Stephen Land, can give notes to the committee members if we so desire as to what we think is important, like the independence part. And that's what we can, making sure to consult with staff. So I guess, do we have nominations? I guess that's how we run this for the subcommittee to work with DEQ.
I think.
Well, yeah, I think we just,
Okay.
at this meeting, I think we should, in our public session, identify who those folks are, how you want to do it, if you want us to vote
Are
on
you
it.
willing to serve on the committee, Dr. Bagley?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I was asking Dr. Bagley if he was willing to serve on the subcommittee.
I want to be officially nominated.
I officially nominate.
I won't turn down nominations.
I nominate Dr. Bailey. Because he accepted.
Dr. Dr. Bagley
I'll
always
second
has more questions than anybody else and looks at things in a much more detailed manner, and I would feel more comfortable with
I'll
it.
second Dr.
John
Bagley.
said.
And then you can see, the first comment they get from the director is, get that Bagley guy out there.
Madam Chair, just a sort of a procedural question. You had said something a moment ago, and I may have misunderstood, but I'll just ask the question. What kind of session is the council in at the moment? Is this a public meeting?
This is public meeting, yeah.
Very good. Just-
It's right there, yeah.
Yeah, anybody who would like to come in can.
Great.
You can see the hordes of people.
Very good.
We locked the door.
Sign on it.
Thanks, Luke.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
may I have just a moment?
go for it.
Ryan, would you do me a favor and look at the personnel regulations and determine for the council what level of participation the people who do sit in these chairs have, because it will be in fact impacting their positions. And I know that there is some, at least in some entities, I don't know if it's here or not, they do have a right to be involved in those discussions and participate. And so I don't know where this will go. I have no idea, but I do want the council to know what the standard is within the human resources, the personnel laws with the state of Wyoming as to how those are impacted.
You know, I don't know the answer.
I know you don't. I just,
I think that's good to get that verification. And I want to recognize that I understand your concern and Joe's concern about having something done with your positions without you being there. But I would say that your input is necessary at a given point.
right.
And but I don't know exactly when that point is. But I think we would be very remiss if we didn't, before we got out of the chute with a formal list of job duties and we consult with these guys. And this is not a reflection on you guys personally, but I think from talking to the legislature, having the committee on the first slide that gets presented to the legislature in this presentation should just say members of the council on it as the team.
Right. Well, no, I'm not suggesting that we be any, I just
think
want to make sure that you guys
Yeah.
don't get in trouble through a personnel issue by doing something that somehow violates the personnel. Because quite honestly, I don't care what you guys do. I do care what happens to you.
Well, I get you, and I'm not suggesting that we exclude you. I'm just saying that, and I think it's good advice that you give us to have us do a review of the personnel rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, Jim, it was something I wanted to say, and it just, you happened to broach the topic. But at some point, and there's our conversation, we had to get to, well, how do we talk to our staff? And how do we get input from you all? And I'm just saying, we do have to have that, but something good.
Well, if I could comment, Madam Chair, I think in these things, it's important to note too, and I'm sure, Ms. Parfit, you can sympathize. You're talking about people's jobs. You can say it's not personal. It's damn personal. It just is. You can't get around it. When you're talking about what we're going to do with these guys, it may not be personal to me. I'm going back to my business, and I'll be off this thing in a year. Sure, it won't be personal to me, but it's personal to you two. Because it's your job and your career and your income. And as you've dealt with personnel, you know how personal it is when you got to go terminate a position. Regardless of the guy's performance, it's just a position that no longer exists. To that guy, it's personal. And I think it's important that we recognize that we can sit here and say, hey, this is no reflection on the people, it's just a position. Well, that's just a polite way of saying, we're going to have to make tough decisions, and sorry, you may not like them. And that's the reality of it, Jim, and you know that, and Joe knows that. But this council's always been kind of a tight-knit group too. So I just want you to know that hopefully we realize that, and that as we handle these issues, we'll try to be somewhat sympathetic to that. And I'm sure, Todd, I'm sure you guys feel the same way. You have employees.
Yeah, just to weigh in on that. this isn't uncommon to us. We have these conversations with the Joint Appropriations Committee all the time, justifying positions, how many positions and what they do. And in fact, that's one of the things that we'll be doing, evaluating our organizational structure of the Land Quality Division to the Minerals and Joint Appropriations over this next year. I mean, it's not uncommon for us to do that. I will say that when we have those conversations, and so if we had a position in land quality and we're evaluating, okay, what's the best way to organize this to be most efficient and meet the needs, or do we have the need for the number of staff that we have? We don't have those individuals as part of the conversation. However, we do, because you want to be respectful of the people that are in the jobs. But as we evaluate that, we always have to look at it from the position rather than the people that are in there and say, yeah, well, we want to keep this position because we like Joe or we like Jim, whatever. That's what I'm talking about. You got to kind of separate that out. You're being respectful because these are real people that we're dealing with when we have those conversations. And it's not easy all the time. But we do need to, as John said, make sure that, and I don't know what that looks like either, but certainly there's a lot of value to this discussion that both Jim and Joe bring to the conversation, and we need to make sure that that happens.
Well, that's what I was trying to capture when I said we need to make sure that we capture everything that they do and not just what we think they do.
Yeah.
To make sure that all of the jobs get done and that we keep their, if there is room for two positions, that we keep those two positions, and we have to make sure that we can justify it, because there are certainly people in the legislature who are personally after Jim and Joe's jobs.
Madam Chair, I mean, Todd and John and I, all three know from running agencies that once you lose a position, you're not going to get it back.
Right.
We've got two now, and if we can hang on to two, that's damn important, because once it's gone, you got to go back and beg for it, and you're not going to get it. And if we end up with, something starts
Like
happening in the state, exactly, the CBM stuff is a great example of it, and we're down to one person, we're going to be screwed, and I don't know. I just know that, every time I lost a position, to get the damn thing back was nearly impossible. So.
Well, what's going to happen is the vice chairman's going to have to do all that stuff.
No, we're not losing positions.
And the secretary will be happy to sign the board.
And maybe in this whole thing, this is more of a committee thing, or a council thing, so never mind. But yeah, we need to make sure that we hit all of the high points, not only with legislature acts, but in the stuff that we think is important. Director Parfit's mentioned this a couple times. Our electronic equipment is doddering. It barely functions. The iPads barely function on the current system. Which means we can't access information, which means we're all bringing up personal stuff in because that's the only way we can get the information, which causes some other issues. So we need to, when we're doing all of this, look and see what we can do to modernize the council also.
Oh, yeah. Madam Chair, with regards to that, just to let you know, the new iPads are will be ordered this afternoon, tomorrow. We got the PO approved today. As for the quality of this stuff, I just got to defend it. You won't find better. I'm sorry. That is as good as it gets. Those microphones are as good as they get. They're the best that's available. They don't age out. They don't get old. They break, but they don't get old. The biggest problem we have in every single event is the internet connection. Yeah. Every single time. We got here this morning, and WildGov and WildGuest were both down. So I've got to defend, people talk about this stuff breaking down, but it's not it. That stuff's good stuff. That's a $20,000, today it's like a $30,000 outfit, maybe 40. We bought it at 20, thanks to John. John Morris twisted his arm to get it done.
John Morris.
But I've got to defend the quality of that stuff, and I got to defend Joe's ability to do it.
No, I
Right.
think Joe is keeping everything
Right.
going.
I'm just saying, you don't know what this council went through with the stuff they put through. John might remember. Tim might remember a little bit.
Yeah.
The stuff we had before we got this, that was horrible. I mean, that stuff was bad. And so, just so you know, this is good stuff.
So if I could,
It's just touchy.
yeah. So, and I think that's part of the evaluation is, okay, what is the status of the equipment? Maybe it doesn't need to be replaced, but maybe maybe components need to be upgraded on a regular schedule. So you want to build those into a budget and say, okay, we're going to need $10,000, every biennium just to make sure if something does go wrong that we have the resources to fix it and stay up and running. But the other piece of it is, and I know Jim and I have talked about this, is there are other IT needs that were kind of in the queue with ETS. And if we can get it out of the queue with ETS, maybe there's a contractual, we could do it contractually rather than waiting for ETS to do it and meet those needs to help with the service. So I think it's just a broad overview of what are the needs, and then making sure that we present back to, and maybe they're going to get something that they didn't expect, which was, okay, now what's the budgetability?
Yeah,
To provide the support.
that's right.
So we don't have to go beg for $20,000. We can say, this is our need, and we can save and buy when this one breaks down or whatever, rather than having to go beg, which is always not fun.
I'm hopeful that that's the opportunity in this exercise is to actually expand. The video conferencing, Madam Chair, the video conferencing capabilities, I think, could be vastly improved. So we never have all the members here, it seems like, because of schedules, but they could somehow or another patch in through some sort of technology has got to be out there for us to purchase to do that.
But we've got it from England. We had Dr. Osmond in England and brought him in through video.
Yeah, I think part of the issue we've experienced, and I think you hit on it, Jim, bandwidth has been the problem. And we're in the old Herschel building, but with one of the bandwidth that was running at that point was just ridiculously low. And you just have to have the bandwidth, and I know all those machines and things will work fine. I mean, we can all do it on our iPads if we have the bandwidth. And so that's a challenge. How do we get the bandwidth we need? And but that's not just a challenge for us. It's a challenge for us. It seems like for a lot of the state agencies. I mean, sometimes even have trouble with bandwidth in my office at UW. Depending where I put the computer, whether the Wi-Fi picks it up.
Okay, John?
Madam Chair, after we've concluded on the committee, I don't know that we have yet, but it sounds like we were there, but I'm interested to hear what Director Parker has for ideas on who's going to be on the DEQ members on this group.
But yeah, so we should know. Yeah, I think just for the record, if we don't have a vote, but at least we could state the members of the committee, so it would be.
Well, at this point, I think it's going to be Dr. Bagley, John Cora, and Deb Balmer on the subcommittee.
As appointed by the chair. I like that.
That works.
It's
Thing in the chairs.
It's in the minutes.
All right.
And yeah, Director Parker, if you have any ideas.
I do. So obviously I want to participate, kind of for the same reasons that you were wanting to make sure you know what's going on.
Right.
But I've thought about this, and that's why Luke, should be Lukesh, and Nancy Beer. And the reason being is, as I was thinking about this, is they have experience not only with the agency and working with the council, but also with the AG's office and looking at it from that perspective. So I think they have a lot to to bring to the table discussion. They'll keep me out of trouble.
And do we want to invite do we want to invite Ryan to these meetings so we have that perspective, or do we want to just?
I think he's always invited, right?
Yeah, from my perspective, I don't get involved in, and if there is a legal question, certainly, but other than that, this is the council's job, and I feel like I do not need to be involved unless there is a legal question of some sort, because as I will always tell my clients, I don't get involved in policy. I don't care about policy. I only care about getting legal answers to my clients. So if there is a legal question, somebody on the committee or can work through the chair, you can give me that question. I will certainly get the group my legal 2 cents. But as far as the policy and reports and all that good stuff, I'll leave it to you all.
So if I could
An answer to that.
weigh in on that one. And I agree with that. I think, but at some point, as we start to formulate a path forward or recommendations, I think we have to touch base with the AG's office and make sure we're not going making sure we're not going in a wrong direction that will get us in trouble. But I think that comes later in the process.
I mean, you got 2 guys there out of that office that ought to be able to keep you between the lines in your subcommittee meetings, and anything else can be addressed in the regular meetings with the rest of us hearing what's going on. So.
Okay. Is there any other? Yep.
It's a detail, I'm sorry. Somebody should be the convener of the group, the working group. And I'm not volunteering myself. I'm kind of thinking that maybe Todd is, I don't know.
Then they can set up the meeting rooms.
Yeah, just to poll everybody to find out their availability, set up the conference call capability if needed, the meeting room, get some note paper together, all the stuff that we typically take for granted. Somebody needs to be the convener, in my opinion, and I would nominate me.
Second.
I don't even get a vote.
No, actually, no.
First time.
Tim has a.
Just a cautionary comment. I would be reminded, you brought up John Morris, so I would be remiss if I didn't bring a little of his philosophy to the table here. So, as we're looking at the weight of the committee and your side of the committee, as you guys move forward, I would just have to say, I would hope that you realize that this committee's weighted pretty heavily in the favor of the state. There's not one representative on there from the private sector. So as you move into your processes,
That's very good.
be cognizant that it's going to be scrutinized, and a lot of who we deal with are the people over here from you and from us. So as you're developing these policies, be aware that we all bring our own life experiences to the table with our opinions and our past history of job services or whatever. Just like you said, these guys from the AG's office are going to bring those experiences to the table. And John, you and Deb, your businesses with the state over the years, and Todd. So, and Dr. Bagley with the university. So keep in mind that you every once in a while do a little brainstorming to say, hey, what would the private sector need, or what would they want, or are they going to have some hangups over these things? Because you don't have anybody in there say, hey, well, wait a minute, what about, Joe Sixpack over there and his issue? Keep in mind that he may look at that differently than you all look at it, and you've kind of got yourselves in a box. So I would just say I'm very good. I won't be subtle when you come back. I'll be able to point out all of your dang faults when you get back and the rest of it. So.
As long as we get this done by March.
And for the committee members, if you want to get paid for this, you're going to need to let me know. Unless you just want me to give you the paperwork to fill out yourself.
Say that again?
When you meet, we have to tell Jim. When you meet, you might want to let me know so I can fill out your travel sheets and your any lodging costs or whatever.
Okay.
Because if I don't know, I won't even fill them out for you.
Well, I'm filling out the damn travel vouchers. I don't remember the last time I was paid for mileage.
I don't know when the last time was you actually set one back.
Tim, as bad as I am?
Yeah.
Let's get back to John's.
I was trying to get him back. Trying to rush past that.
You know, as far as organizing things and finding meeting space, I think that's fine. We'd be happy to do that. And actually, wouldn't be I'll delegate that.
Yeah.
You know, make sure she contacts everybody and do a Google poll and find out. We can do it just as easily in Laramie as we can in Cheyenne. I mean, in terms of travel, we could split maybe between the two.
That'd be great.
So during
Pinedale would be fine for Deb.
crappy weather, we'll do it in Cheyenne.
Yeah, so I can. Arrives.
But yeah, so as far as, you know, doing that administrative piece of it, I think that's fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
is there anything else anybody has?
So the three of us can just talk to each other, set up a time that
Yeah,
we can, the three of us can meet.
We can meet before we depart the day.
Yeah.
Which I think-
That's what I'm thinking.
Maybe there was a reason I didn't want on that. See you, Dave.
Do we want to set the time for the first? Or do I just want to send out?
Yeah, I think the three of us are gonna stick around for,
Yeah, once our meeting's done here,
We
we
could
can
stick
stay
around.
if you're
We can stay
able
around.
to chat.
Yeah.
As
Stick around too, good.
okay.
long as we get a bio break first.
I'm surprised you haven't asked for me before.
Oh, I've got to.
Why don't we take a break and then when we come back, there's one more thing we need to address and then we can be done.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Megan,
Yes.
would you sign those minutes real quick?
motion to move into executive session for legal advice on our FOIA request.
Yep.
On what we move? So move information.
I need a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay. So, I guess, Jim, why don't you address it? There were a lot of complaints made that the council was not kept informed on public records requests and what happened with them. So. So I need a motion to adjourn unless there's any other business.
So moved.
Okay.
You were pretty quick with that.
I'm making a note on the meeting just in case that's not recorded. Okay.
Jim, you're asking last time you asked everybody, remember a motion on the thing, nobody remembers ever.